given both of you were at Twickenham, I'll defer to you both slightly for insight on this. But Charles, it sounds like the atmosphere at Twickenham it was the best it's been for donkey's years. That it was on a new level. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just, and that's what comes from beating one of the best teams in the world. You know, the stadium was absolutely jumping. I was there till quite late because I met up with a couple of mates, and even until the players had left, there were still fans sort of lost in the revelry of a wonderful win. And it was as noisy when the drop goal went over. That was as noisy as it's been in a while. It seems to always happen against Ireland, actually, because in that game in 2022 when Charlie Ewers was sent off, I think that was a sort of, in terms of atmosphere, that was quite a defining day as well for Twickenham. In that's as noisy as I've heard it in a long while, and that was certainly the case on Saturday. And long may it continue.
Hang on, I want to hear more about how long you were hanging around at Twickenham for. Just, you know, were you there till they turned off the lights? Like how late were you there?
Not quite until they turned off the lights, but until I watched the Irish team bus leave.
Okay.
It was tops off in the Guinness tent.
What, Charles?
Yeah. Charles was, yeah.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Charlie, listen, I think we have said repeatedly on here and in writing, so it's on record, that we were waiting to see something like this from England on Saturday. Can you just sort of sum up how pleased you were actually to see them play like they did, but also how big this is for this side in terms of a step forward and getting everybody on board?
I'll answer the first bit first. I think it's huge for the team itself, just because they'd have been working towards a plan. I think they would have really seen the phrase Borthwick used, I'm paraphrasing slightly, was just it was important for them to get validation for their hard work, and I think validation for the plans they put in place, how they targeted Ireland, clearly with a big focus on kick return. They needed, we said last week, I feel like we did anyway, that they couldn't just go there and spoil, and England's players said that. He said, we're not just there to spoil set piece and kick loads and impart a pressure game plan. I think they knew they needed a little bit more, and we said, didn't we, they needed to be sort of slicker in transition. I think we said it, and I wasn't entirely confident that they could be that slick. You know, the two tries that they scored before Ben Earls through Ollie Lawrence and then Furbank directly from kick return, and they generated quick rucks with the first carry, or quick enough rucks to just almost catch Ireland over committing to the tackle area, and then just getting their spacing wrong, both on the first time on the short side and then the second time on the open side, and then they punished them really clinically. Now you tend to find yourself saying that about other sides. You find yourself saying that about New Zealand a lot, that they'll pick off an overlap quite easily and punish a side for becoming too narrow. We said it about Scotland against England. We say it about Ireland all the time. That you're able to say that about England, I think, would have made it very satisfying for supporters, and actually very satisfying having covered the team and sort of seeing kind of hints of what they're trying to do. Felix Jones said we want an 80-minute performance. Whether or not it was that's the sort of holy grail, isn't it? But that you just saw a conviction to go with what they would have talked about in the week.
Yeah, there's something really satisfying about it, isn't it? Because you can sort of you feel personally able to buy in a lot more into what they're trying to do when you can actually see proof of it. I thought the reactions afterwards were really interesting, because you had Ben Earl was pretty defiant, sort of talking about the negativity that had come England's way and saying that people have been calling them the worst England ever. We're still trying to find out who actually gave that quote, but listen, I think we're all of an opinion that if that's what is needed to kind of rev England up and to get that kind of performance out of Earl, great.
Earl was phenomenal. I think he was helped by how that pack was rebalanced a bit. No slight on Ethan Roots, but what we saw from England, they had Slade and Lawrence, that second game, bit more cohesion. They had Itoje Martin and Chesham. Those are two things I think that they wanted from the start of the Six Nations, and obviously Mitchell being back fit. How's his engine? My goodness, that game grew ragged from how sort of high there were quite a few, because of the kicking exchanges, there were quite a few long passages where England were in possession, and he must have covered so much ground. So well done to his elastic ACLs in his knee. He's done very well there. But no, Ben Earl is a guy who I think, having spoken to him a fair bit in interviews and things, I feel fairly confident saying that he maybe needs to manufacture those chips on his shoulder sometimes to get a performance out of himself and to rev himself up before the World Cup quarter final, where he was fantastic. He said, "I don't feel like I've delivered on the highest stage yet," and then he sort of almost needs to put pressure on himself. I know in age group rugby he sort of would look at someone like Tom Curry and really want to kind of emulate him and sort of put pressure on himself to emulate him, and whatever he did worked for him.
Charles, can I ask you about? We were quite excited for George Martin to be back, and trying to guess really how they would do with Toji, Martin, Chesham. Would it be a Toji at 6? Would it be Martin at 6? In the end, it ended up being Chesham. Martin's return was fantastic. Why was he so effective and so important for England, did you think, against Ireland?
He just set the tone physically. He was running around belting people. There was one great moment in the first half where he, I think it was under a penalty advantage, where he completely cut Tyburn in two. And it sort of stood over him like a heavyweight boxer. He just knocked out his adversary. It really set the physical tone, and I think he really sort of disrupted Ireland, as did Ollie Chesham. You know, the two of them were running around. That Leicester have started dubbing them the Bash Brothers, and there was a couple of times where Chesham put in some big shots. You think of that, where he sort of slightly injured himself, knocking Aki into touch from the restart. This was a new sort of side to England that we hadn't seen too much, mainly because Martin and Chesham have not played together too often. But that sort of physicality and that brutality was a great foil to Itoje, who we saw some lovely skillful touches from him, and all of a sudden it looked quite balanced, the English pack.
The disruption point's really interesting because we saw Wales 2 weeks ago kind of be quite passive in defence and not flood the breakdown, and Ireland therefore struggled because there were bodies, like more bodies in the defensive line, and while they could recycle, they couldn't find the space they wanted. This was almost the opposite approach, where it was, we're just going to brutalise your breakdown and you will not get any clean right ball, and therefore you can't have your fancy pods out the back because you need to flood in to actually keep possession, which was such an effective approach from England.
Yeah, it seemed like in the build-up we were sort of told that it became apparent that there were two ways England could go about it. The Wales approach you're describing there, Colsey, seems fairly similar to what New Zealand did against them in the quarter-final, whereby they sort of held off a little bit and funneled them towards touchlines and then went hard at the breakdown of touchlines. Guys like, I think Leicester Fainganuku played in that game, and he's a bit of a handful. Ardy Surveyor was a handful out wide as well. England would have taken, I think, a lot of heart from how they went in the last two Six Nations games against Ireland, where they didn't necessarily have this overt blitz approach, which is what Felix Jones has so explicitly brought in. But they forced a lot of turnovers through proactive line speed, through targeting receivers in as part of Ireland's phase play, and it was just really interesting. Obviously, England still conceded two tries, and they were in transition, weren't they, a little bit.
Lovely finish from James Lowe for his second, actually. With
two
the
really well worked tries, and that's another reason England can be pleased with how they went, because although Ireland were disrupted and the 6-2 bench going wrong or just going wrong out of kind of misfortune with Nash and Frawley's injuries, Ireland still got very, very close to winning that game because they are a champion side. So for England to sort of weather the storm, I think you always talk about, in the Eddie Jones era, we saw a lot of fast starts, didn't we? And then maybe that momentum would peter out, and then players were sort of left going, right, okay, do we stick at plan A or whatever? There was a real strength and conviction throughout the game for England, that they knew they had to be good at kick return, that they knew they had to disrupt Ireland's set piece. I agree with Charles. Martin was massive in the maul. That they took away that a little bit from Ireland. And they kept at it, and they got their reward at the end.
The fast start point is quite interesting, because I messaged both of you when I was mopping up everything in Rome and said it sounds like they've come out of the blocks.
What happened in Rome?
Absolutely firing. Later. And I sort of texted you both saying it sounds like England are absolutely flying out the blocks here, but they might be losing a bit of steam. And you both like, well...
I thought...
Not really. Well, Charles was like,
no, I agreed.
Really.
I agreed, because Ireland did some mind games 101, bit of kidology at half-time when... Crowley kicked the penalty to go 12-8 up, everybody sprinted off. All the Ireland players sprinted off the field, and I can't remember who I saw. It was a forward. It wasn't Dan Coles. I'm not gonna. He wasn't on. No, he was on. Sorry. I'm not gonna pick on Dan Cole. But
worse.
There was a player. Yeah, there was a player who went not quite down to their haunches, but definitely hands on thighs. I thought, well, are England blind here? Because psychologically they'd played well and were yet down 4 points and against a good side, and they would go down further as by 17-8. But no, they stuck at it after half time.
I'd highly recommend Charlie's analysis, obviously, post-match from yesterday, about one particular point in the build-up to the George Furbank try where Ireland was so kind of thrown out of shape by England that you had 5 people on one side of the field just opposite Ben Earl. And I know Ben Earl played very well, but I mean, I think everyone would agree that's over-resourcing one side of your defensive line.
Do you remember how much we went to town at England's defence for Tommy Allen's try in Rome? It reminded me a lot of that, where it's just speed can really kind of really throw off defensive structure, and that's what England did, and what we haven't seen them do for a while.
I know. Charles, let's talk about the ending, and particularly. Manny Favour-Bosa has just made a fantastic impact on this team in the last 2 games. Speaking to people through a piece kind of in the build-up about his incredible rise. I mean, it really is a year since he was playing for Taunton in National 1, and look at him go. The vibe was very much, I just hope they can sort of give him the ball and time and space to be him and to show how effective he can be. I would say that they did that at the end. Would you agree, Charles?
Yeah, I would. I think he's touching world class, to be honest.
Whoa.
Already, he looks absolutely superb. He looks, when he came off the bench at Murrayfield, he looked like he was sort of playing a different sport. He just covers the ground so quickly. He's so strong. He's so lean. He's built like a brick outhouse, and his start was completely justified, and he looked as good as any of the wings on the pitch.
And in terms of the actual finish itself, cracking moment for Marcus Smith with the drop goal. I saw some interesting points, and we might have actually had these in our questions this week. Thank you for sending them in. We'll get to them. People just querying, Charlie, whether because England had that penalty advantage so close to the post. I mean, I feel like this is a bit like looking a gift horse in the mouth. Like if the drop goal's there to win a game against Ireland, you take the game against Ireland. I don't know. Should they have risked something to try and get the bonus point try, given the penalty advantage was being played? I don't know.
Maybe I'm a coward. Maybe I'm technically inept. But I think I'd have given myself 2 chances by taking the drop goal and then also with that penalty in the back pocket.
It's
what
true.
Do you think? Am I
No, it's true, because it's easy. It's so easy for everyone who isn't Marcus Smith to sit here and say, "Oh, that penalty's a gimme from however far out." Like, you know,
that point does change the dynamic a little bit as far as if England do get it, they're within 3 of Ireland going into the final weekend, and therefore it's any sort of win for Scotland that gives them a bigger chance of it. But
I think they deserved it. I think that was more the thing. I don't think it's going to make any difference to the table, because I think surely Ireland are going to beat Scotland in Dublin. But I think they deserved it. I think they were significantly better than Ireland on the day, and I think they deserved that bonus point win.
Yeah,
I think it was more of a mentality thing if they had gone for it, and that just to get that 4 try, just to say that we've beaten one of, if not the best team in the world with a bonus point.
I think Joe Marler was desperate for the ball, wasn't he? Based on one tweet that I saw where he was basically having a go at his Queen's colleagues for not supplying him with a short range carry right before the drop goal.
I mean, serious point. He was part of a bench that I think the front row were brought on with 25 minutes at least to go, including Theo Dan. That was really, but I thought that was proactive, really impressive part of how Steve Borthwick managed it. And Joe Marler's kind of alive there. He's calling for the ball for Danny Kerr to just tighten up that ruck defence. So, the serious point is, he's a pretty switched on rugby player, Joe Marler.
He hasn't got to try in however many tests, does he? So I think that's really the main gripe.